First of all, have we got any apologies? I don't think so.
Can you just announce from Councillor Parker?
Apologies from Councillor Parker. Are there any disclosures of interest anyone wishes to make on the agenda? No. Okay, thank you. So the minutes of the meeting on the 25th of June have been circulated. Are there any comments, or are we content with them as a true record of what took place? I see no hands, so I'm assuming silence means consent. All agreed? Thank you. So we move on to the staff survey. Are you introducing Mr. Purfield?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going to do a presentation for today on the staff survey results from this year. It was undertaken in-house by the Performance and Consultation Insight Unit via an email link to all staff from the 16th of September to the 4th of October. There were 237 responses, which is 74.3%, which is 3/4, which is an excellent response, one of the largest we've ever had. And so I'm just going to go through the main findings of the survey. I won't be including the space survey that was done regarding the Elizabeth House planning for the future, so that's in the report that you will all receive later today. The profile of respondents, they were it matched what we have in the council. 36% were male, 64% were female. As you can see, there's a lot more over 40s, which is again reflects the profile of the council at 69%, 71% full-time and 29% part-time. The first section I'm going to look at is Stratford District Council as an employer, and as you can see from the slides, the opportunities for long-term career was 50%. Sorry, so yeah, so Councillor, yeah.
Mike. We don't know how many of the grade C or above responded then, or how many within those grades responded.
Yes, Councillor, we do. It's in the report. I can give you that. We have the numbers in the report. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start with looking at the council as an employer. So we asked staff about various things, and as you can see, 57% felt there were real opportunities for long-term career, and that's 3 points up on 2022. 78% of staff feel proud they work for Stratford, and that's 3 points higher than 2022 and 9 points higher than 2015. Part-time staff were more likely to agree with the statement than full-time staff. The importance of benefits has increased over the period of 2 years at 72%, and that's 8 points up, which is very positive. 89% agreed that managers make allowances for demands of their employees' home life. That's around the same as last time. And then the overall satisfaction rating as an employer shows that we are 89%, which is very good or good, which is 7 points higher than last time, which is an excellent result. Only 1% of staff rated it poor or very poor. We also asked staff why they answered the way they did. Staff like the flexibility, including working from home, the people and good management, not unexpected results in the comments. Again, to reiterate, the report we sent later today with a lot more detail on the open-ended comments especially. Moving on to line management. Hopefully there's a bit more words here. This is the area where probably there was any negativity. There was a bit of negativity here. There were 10 questions, and 4 questions there was a decrease in the percentage, but nothing major. Line manager support remained the same at 86%. Listen to what I have to say went down a couple of percentage points to 87%, and 82% said the line manager encouraged ideas, and that was up 1 point on 2022. And looking at the bullet points, as you can see from the text, most of the results were up, although the first two, they were down, ensures that they have skills needed to do their job, and the line manager acts decisively, providing guidance. But generally speaking, the results there were very positive again. Moving on to trust and respect, this is a question one thing I didn't say was obviously the staff says it's been going since 2002, so this is we've used a lot of questions the same. These were brought in about 10, 12 years ago, and as you can see, trust in our heads of service and chiefs of executive was 72%. For service managers was 77%, which is slightly down 3 percentage points. But for councillors, this rose from 26% in 2022 to 40% in 2024. So it's an excellent rise. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I'll show you more trends. 79% agreed that management treated them with fairness and respect, and 51% felt that councillors, again, were treated with fairness and respect. The councillors one is up 11 percentage points, and it's at the highest level it's ever been. Trusting councillors, I'm just going to look at that in a little bit more detail. As you can see from the bar charts, 40% is a good result compared to 2012, where it was 20%, so it's actually doubled. It's interesting to note the middle ground of neither. We feel that that's because obviously a number of staff don't have a lot of dealings with councillors, so I suspect they sort of answered, we don't really know, so they put neither agree or disagree at 49. But again, some really good results there. Looking at the fairness with councillors, again, as you can see, record highs at 51%, comparing it back in the day at 2012 at 40%. And again, the disagreement figure is the lowest it's ever been at just 5%. So all really good stuff. The thing that came out of the comments was basically staff, if things could be improved, is to be a bit more be seen more around the office and things like that. Obviously staff don't really know who the councillors are, so maybe we should be organising some sort of, I don't know, tours round or something, going around the office and meeting staff. We then moved on to having a say, and in that respect, 64% of staff feel their views are listened, and that's gone up 3 points. 67% of staff feel they can speak their mind about the way things are in the organisation. Again, that's about the same as last time. Nothing's really changed on this one. This one's not on the slide. And feeling their views are acted upon in a timely manner, and that was the highest it's been at 44. And 47% feel that something is done as a result of their views being listened to. We did ask asked staff to comment on the management team and how they can improve their leadership. And as you can see, there's some text, the main text there from the open-ended, of which there were 82 responses. The main thing, and to stress, 18 comments is out of 237 staff, so it's not a major issue, but there were some comments there regarding listening only to managers, leading to a skewed understanding what was going on. An element of feeling there was some senior managers listening to some voices more than others, but generally speaking, quite positive response there from the staff regarding management team. Moving on to job satisfaction, I'll touch on staff morale on the next slide. But 63% of staff felt there has been an increase in the amount of work they're expected to carry out. That's gone down 9 points on 2022. Exactly half the staff agreed they could get their job done within their contracted hours, and that's the same as 2022. But as a negative, disagreement was its highest level since 2015 at 38%. So workload is coming out as an issue with staff. 48% of staff feel recognised by the council for an exceptional piece of work, and that's a rise of 3 points on 2022, and the highest it's ever been in all the surveys, so that's good news. We asked a new question regarding collaboration, and 2/3 of staff feel they are supported when collaborating within the council, and 1 in 10 disagreed. And 62% agreed that they have a good knowledge of other service areas at SDC, while 14% disagreed. Again, that might seem to be a low figure, but remember that a lot of staff, maybe only deal in their only section of their work and don't really get to work with other people in the council. So I'm going to just move on to morale, which is on the next slide. As you can see from the bar chart there, morale is at 41%, and that's actually 4 points higher than 2022. Whether or not 41% is a good figure, I don't know, because it has gone down 12 points on 2019. Full-time staff were more likely to have a low morale than part-time staff, and also those in the lower grades were more likely to be lower at morale. We did ask the question of staff why, and there were a number of positive comments. As you can see, there were 30 positive comments. But again, workload was cited as many of the reasons for their low morale. Large number talked about relentless work, which seemed impossible to get on top of, given current staffing levels. Some talked about their work being stressful, leaving them exhausted and with a poor work-life balance. But that was from the comments you will see more in the full report.
Councillor Alcock, have you got a question?
No, sorry, I'll sit correctly.
Councillor Fradley has.
Ian, can you use the mic?
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
With all these figures you've been collecting, have they been reported back to the staff as well?
Yes, they have. Yes, they've all.
And I don't know whether I've missed anything there, but have they agreed that that's what they said?
Well, I haven't gone back to them, but all staff have received the report. So whether or not individual teams have been speaking, with each other in staff meetings, I don't know. Obviously, David's done 3 staff briefings in the last week, and whether or not there's been anything from that, I don't know.
A few other questions. Saw Councillor Parry. Councillor Shenton. Whichever. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. It's not often I go ahead of Councillor Shenton. Maybe I'm just missing a point, but obviously I just wondered whether, Simon, you can just explain, we've got very high satisfaction levels, higher than ever, and then we've got higher morale levels, and there seems to be a bit of conflict there. Yeah, that's what I mean, lower morale levels and higher satisfaction levels. I would more likely tend to see a sort of similar pattern. So we've got very high satisfaction, but then lower morale. Can you explain the idiosyncrasies in terms of research and numbers on those comparisons? Thank you.
Can I just ask Councillor Shenton, is yours on a similar point?
It was to just really answer Ian's point more than anything else, yeah. So come back to me.
From my perspective, if I can, Simon, before. Ian, they are what they are, to be fair. They're the responses from each individual member of staff, 237 responses, which were put together to get the sum of where we are. So whether staff recognise it or not, that's exactly how they responded on each of those particular points. I think in relation to the morale, I think there is a different question to recognising whether or not the authority is a good employer or not. That was a question that we asked at the beginning. Is Stratford-on-Avon District Council a good employer? And yes, 90% of the staff said yes. I do think it's a slightly different question then within that to say, well, how do you feel, Joe Bloggs, today about life? How do you feel about working at the council? And I think it's not okay. It's better than where we were last time. I think there were some specific events that happened in 2021-22 that impacted upon the morale of staff. That has started to turn around. It's pleasing to see an improvement on there. Simon is going to go through all of the slides. How we use this information then afterwards is that we sit down with Unison and we identify the top key areas that we want to address. This is still an area that we would like to work on. and there's a question in relation to personal harassment in a minute that you'll see, which is again another key concern to us that we would certainly want to address as a result of what we're doing here. But at the moment, it is just a replaying back of what the findings are from the staff survey.
Yeah, it was just to come back on the morale issue that you raised. Yesterday, Unison didn't raise any specific issues unduly in the meeting yesterday. They seemed quite comfortable with the results as they stand, and they weren't complaining. Well, I certainly didn't hear. Maybe hearing aids didn't pick it up, but I didn't hear anybody complaining about morale.
When we get to it, there was a comment on another area. We'll come.
Thank you. Just moving on now to the working conditions question. 19% of staff believe they always had or often had unachievable deadlines. So that's following on from the workload, which I think, agreeing with David Buckland, that I think people do enjoy working at the council, obviously, and there's also some very good results. It's just, I think, obviously some staff are feeling a little bit more pressured and a lot of workload. So I think that's probably coming out of the results here, and that answers it there as well. The good news is that 56% feel often or always supported through their emotionally demanding work, and that hasn't changed since 2022. And we asked about intensity of regular, how do you work very intensively on a regular basis? That hasn't changed either at 56% as well. That's the same result. It hasn't changed. So whether or not that's, probably indicative of life at the moment with all different pressures, I don't know. We then moved on to we asked the staff some very serious questions regarding personal harassment. And this is to stress that the results here are where they've answered sometimes, often and always. And I will stress that most of the time it's the sometimes box that they've ticked, not often or always. So staff reckoned that 32% of staff, felt sometimes, often or always they had personal harassment from public and customers, and that was up slightly to 2 percentage points. Colleagues, it was at 12%. That was in the sometimes box mostly. There was the odd one saying often, but generally speaking, it was sometimes. But it has gone up 7 points, which is obviously a concern. And for councillors, that's around the same figure at 5%. It is interesting, going back to the harassment from the public, younger staff members were more likely to say they suffer harassment than the older staff in the organisation.
Yeah, if I could just dwell on that slide just for a second. It was specifically, I think we kind of expected the results in relation to the public or customers. We don't welcome them, but we kind of recognise that there has been that increase. The result throughout the whole of the survey that did shock me, though, was the more than doubling in relation to the personal harassment from colleagues, and that has shocked me. It's also shocked Unison, and collectively we will address that. Absolutely, we'll use whatever information we can from the staff survey, but that's an absolute real area of concern for us.
If I can say, Unison yesterday were concerned about the degree of the public and customer harassment, and 32% is actually quite a lot of people. Out of a sort of sample of 250, it's 60 or 70 people. Mr. Burfield will tell me precisely, but it doesn't seem to be improving. I mean, I've had the same broad message coming here and into the health and safety group as well. And one fears it's part of the society we now live in.
We must never just say, well, it's what society's like now. I share, and I did in our meeting yesterday with David, my grave concerns about these personal harassment figures. I think that the public and customer personal harassment is one thing. For some people that'll be over the telephone. You can put a telephone down. But when it comes to the personal harassment figures regarding colleagues and councillors, there is nowhere to go with that, and that is quite an intimidatory set of figures there. People would be, you know, we could be dealing with some very serious situations there, and I look forward to hearing perhaps a separate briefing as to how this is going to be addressed, because the figures there are unacceptable, and I'm concerned that the trajectory is quite a steep rise, really. And what is 12%? If you had 12 and 5 the colleagues and councillors, that's 17% of those figures. That's a very high number that have suffered harassment, I think, from within this building, really. And I think that's a really gravely serious set of figures there, and I'm deeply saddened by it. Thank you.
I think where's one on those sorts, Chair?
Any other points? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Now moving on to confidential reporting. This slide looks at do the staff know how to report inappropriate behaviour or to raise issues of well-being, and 87% do, which is a very positive result. It's about the same as last time. Then we asked whether there's the various ways that staff can use to raise well-being issues, or if they've got experience of inappropriate behaviour. So 70% of staff would use the whistleblowing procedure, 92% of staff would go to line manager, 76% would go to unison reps, 58% would go to a respect champion, 70% to mental health first aider, and 63% to a wellbeing champion. Allied to that, we looked at the awareness of these different procedures, and as you can see there, 12% of staff weren't aware of the whistleblowing procedure, 18% respect champions, 6% unison reps, 6% mental health first aiders, and 12% wellbeing champions. We did ask why staff might not go to the people concerned, and not unexpectedly, really, out of the 46, it was the main reasons were confidentiality, and they felt it was inappropriate to talk to work colleagues about such issues as wellbeing. So they weren't unexpected comments that were made.
Councillor Shenton.
Just a curiosity, going back to that slide, were there any employees that are not aware of any of those? Pointed question.
I'll get back to you.
Any other questions? Okay, do you want to carry on?
Thank you, Chair. We then look at training and development, and this question has been asked for the last 20 years, and the good news is that 8 out of 10 staff are satisfied that they've received sufficient training. That hasn't changed from 2022, and 71% of staff feel they get access to training and development needs to fulfil their professional qualifications. We always asked about why you don't do training and development, and obviously, again, not unexpectedly, most people were too busy, or their teams were too busy, and they weren't able to take time out for training. The comments, you'll see them in the main report again, very, very low numbers of comments, so I think that suggests that there's a great deal of satisfaction with the training offered by the council. The last but one slide on the results is where I can say this is probably the most positive area of the survey, and it regards communication, where we've received some really good feedback. 92% of staff expressed satisfaction with the methods used to communicate information, and that was 7 points higher than 2022. Only 1% were dissatisfied, which is the best figure ever recorded. Interestingly, female respondents were more likely to be very satisfied than male respondents in that question. 89% of employees expressed satisfaction with the amount of information communicated to them. That was up 25 points on 2015. So I think it's a really, really good result. 87% of employees expressed satisfaction with the communication within their own section and unit. Again, that's the highest satisfaction levels over 5 surveys. Those receiving regular team briefings, they were 85%, and of which those who have those briefings, 96% were satisfied. Again, that's testimony to the senior managers and line managers in the organisation. We then moved on to the chief executive briefings. 7 out of 10 staff claim they always attend the chief executive briefings. That's slightly lower than the 2022 figure, but those who do attend, the usefulness and very useful or quite useful rose from 90 to 93%. So what is discussed at briefings is well thought of by the staff, and in fact, there was a high percentage of people over 40 who thought it was very useful than those of a younger age. We then asked staff what they used to obtain their information. There's a long list of things, and not unexpectedly, the chief exec's briefings were the most popular, 87. The weekly staff email is read by 78% of staff, and obviously the information they receive at team meetings. The overall satisfaction figure then for overall internal communication has risen 4 percentage points, from 82% to 86%, which is an excellent response. And more female employees were satisfied than male counterparts in the council in the results I looked at. So the last slide now looks at...
Could I just ask a question, really, of the chief executive? I'd just be interested to know how the staff briefing by the chief exec works. Is that face-to-face or...?
Okay, so, crikey, we've got so many different working patterns with staff. It's a real art to put this together. So we have one briefing in two. It's a series of 3 briefings that we do. One in the beginning of the week, one in the end of the week, one in the afternoon, one in the morning, one face-to-face and 2 remote. So we do have the opportunity for anybody to attend in any which way they want. The figures for the last rounds, we've had about 230 staff attend the last series, which was concluded yesterday. So out of nearly 300 staff, that's not a bad turnout rate. There is the opportunity for questions during that. We do ask for questions before as well. I will say I don't often get many questions come forward at those kind of debates, but I think the figures show how useful staff are finding those sessions.
Thank you. Are we feeling a bit cold? We've just got to put up with it.
Generally, people getting cold. Is that the issue?
I can ask premises to come.
I'll turn the dial if that's what we're worried about. I'll refer myself to HR.
Right. We'll come back to questions to Mr. Purfield in a moment when we've all sat down again.
Sorry,
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Purfield?
We've got one
slide. One more slide, sorry.
Yep.
Last slide. We do ask a general question at the end. What is the best thing about working at Stratford District Council, and what things would you like to change? And again, these figures never change really over the time. The top 4 likes were, obviously 61% saying it's the people, the colleagues, the team. We had comments, things like friendly and supportive colleagues, people I work with make the work days go quick and enjoyable. There's a strong people culture across the council. It's all very positive. Not unexpectedly, 67 people said they like the flexi time, flexibility and flexible working of the council. Benefits 33, parking 33 as well. So, I don't think that's a thing that we don't always see that every year. Looking at the top 4 changes that came out of the comments, and again, they're all thoroughly analysed in the report. The office environment came out more so than before, where 33 people made comments, and that's regarding things like the state of the chairs, state of the carpets, state of the toilets, the poor decor, general cleanliness in the kitchens, the general sort of maintenance of the building was starting to come through. 27 comments did talk about organisation and culture and better working practices. Some felt staff could be more professional and have a more positive make a more positive working environment. Maybe having some more joined up working with other services, and be less ambitious with some of the plans we have, and do the basics right. But generally speaking, it was not as many changes needed than before, although pay came into the top 4. Hasn't happened before, which is interesting. Very last slide, it just explains what we're doing.
I'll just make the point on the pay. Okay. That was before the pay award had been agreed with Unison and paid. So I think the survey ended in early October, didn't it? And the pay actually arrived in staff's pay packets in November. So.
Thank you. At the last.
Sorry, Councillor Shenton.
Thanks. Just a very quick one, going back to that slide, where we've got hybrid working. What specifically was the complaint about that, or the general gist of complaints?
That was down to, again, I'm trying to remember what it said, but it was generally speaking, some people wanted to work more from home than being in the office. But that was the main thrust of that one.
For context, councillors, that's 15 responses out of 237. Generally, there's really good acceptance and adherence to the requirement that staff work 40% of their working week within the office. And it could be really obvious that a few staff, a small number, aren't happy with that arrangement, but I can assure you that that's what we're sticking with as a council.
Just curious to see 15 now. I mean, it's less than 10%. It's, maybe 7 or 8%. It's fairly low, but they to complain about 15 people. Yeah. 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 Very low. Fine.
And the last slide just says what we've been doing with it. It's obviously been gone to management team. It's all staff have received the report. It's also been part of the briefings that the chief executive has been doing. It's been to GCNG yesterday, obviously here today. It's going to the Respect Champions group as well. And in time, the HR and the management will be developing an action plan going forward.
Thank you very much. First question, Councillor Junett.
I just wanted to be able to say thank you. Could you convey our thanks back to staff, because being able to take part in the survey is very, very valuable to all of us, and to know what the opinions are and what the working conditions are. So just please say thank you to all staff for taking part.
I'm sure we'd all want to endorse that. Any further questions? Comments? Just Councillor Wally Hawkins.
Yeah, Simon, do you think there's a question that, looking at the survey results here, that if we were to do another survey, that you would actually add to it to try to drill down any more from some of the comments that have been made?
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, we did actually discuss this. We do have a way of staff feeding back to management through a confidential comments box that is used on a quarterly basis, and I know that the management team then respond to those comments. I suspect that will continue in the near future.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Purfield. Very interesting. Right.
Yeah, no,
I'm fed up with it. Every time we sit here, we just get, it's not warm air, it's cold air that's coming down on us.
Simon, do you think you can ask premises to see if they could just turn everything off?
Yeah, I'll bring your card and what have you. Thank you. Is that all right? Thanks.
I don't think you can take the microphone because that.
No, if you give us that card and so I can hear.
No, I don't dispute that.
I'll be getting the head cold.
you, Simon.
Let's do the next item. It's Sam.
Sam will do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we move on to item 5, the staff strategy update, and Sam Myatt's going to introduce the report.
Thank you. Good morning. This is a brief update on the staff strategy monitoring report. So the staff strategy was agreed back in December 2023, and we made a commitment to come back to this committee twice yearly to feedback on how we've been performing and what we've achieved during that period. This is the second of those. So this is for the period from 1st of July to the 31st of December. You'll see in the appendices a chart which demonstrates in more detail what we've achieved, but to touch on some of the highlights here, we now have 3 corporately funded apprenticeships, which were agreed back on the 26th of September, and a series of career graded posts. We've also achieved the Defence Employer Recognition Scheme, also known as the Armed Forces Covenant. The recruitment agency framework has been implemented for the first time. We have a new occupational health provider that started in September. The staff survey and analysis has been completed, as you'll have heard from the previous report, and an action plan is pending. We've also had the launch of a perimenopause and menopause policy, and awareness training has been provided for a cross-section of the organisation and has been mandatory for all line managers and team leaders. So there's much more awareness about that, the feedback for which has been absolutely excellent. We're due to report back to this committee again in May 2025. The report is broadly for noting. I think it perhaps be helpful to touch on some of the health and wellbeing things, because some of those were part of Simon's previous presentation. So we're relaunching the Wellbeing Champions. That group has been quite as active as we would like for the last few months due to work commitments, but we're hoping to get that back on track again. Relaunch of mental health first aiders. So we had approximately 10% of the organisation that were trained as mental health first aiders prior to COVID. A number of those have left, and there have been other changes in the organisations. So we now have a fresh training programme created for early next year, where we will have a series of new volunteers to be mental health first aiders, and refresher training took place for those of us who were already mental health first aiders last week. So we're in a much better place with those. Development of the outdoor space for staff, a series of wellbeing events that have been taking place throughout the year. We're undertaking a review of the Employee Assistance Programme, and we've already reviewed the occupational health provision. And we've currently got some temporary support in our team to help achieve that, with use of a full-time fixed term contractor for a period of 2 years to help us achieve the staff strategy. I wasn't particularly going to touch on anything else in the report. If you wanted to have a look at the charts and ask any questions, perhaps the second of those two is more helpful than the first. But broadly, what it shows is that we have achieved all the things that we set out to achieve by the year end. And actually, we've already made a start on some of the things that are planned for first quarter of 2025. But I'm happy to take any questions that anybody's got on those.
Councillor Coucher.
I'm aware, obviously, that certain changes have taken place in relation to employment law in the recent legislation, and that may have a very important effect on our ability to take on people on temporary contract or on fixed-term contracts. And I know that when we've been discussing that within service, that's been raised as a question. I think it'd be very helpful if we could get a briefing on that, on what effect that will have for us in the future.
I could certainly provide one of those to you outside of this group, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, as part of this monitoring report, particularly within health and well-being, if this committee could see an ongoing, some ongoing figures on the number of days sick taken, because I think that often relates to areas under the health and well-being, and I think it is important for us to monitor how the council, because that also goes back to the morale situation. I think it would just be very helpful that if we recorded the number of days sick that staff are taking, if that makes sense. I don't know how anybody else on the committee feel.
So that figure is included within the corporate performance monitoring, which we take through the Cabinet. It also goes to the JCNG meeting that was reported yesterday, so elected members have seen the oversight of that. I do believe, though, that we also bring a report which includes those kind of stats into the employment committee. So, yeah, well, we're on the same page as you. I can report for the first 6 months, we have a 7.5 day target that we don't want staff to take more than 7.5 days. We're well below that so far this year. And coming back to the hybrid working that we were just talking about, if people are feeling off colour, they wouldn't normally have come into the office. They've got the ability to work from home. That has had a demonstrable impact on the reduction in sick leave within the organisation.
Councillor Shenton.
Thanks, Chair. Just to confirm what Dave has just said, yesterday's sick days per employee were publicised as 2.08 on average, so well below the 7 days. I just wanted to reiterate what I said yesterday, which was a fantastic achievement to get to 26 items, well, all but the 5 that you're working on, we discussed yesterday, but to have so many of these actions completed and started, I think is commendable, because I know I made it clear 6 months, a year ago, that I doubted whether you would get all these done, because I just thought it was a big ask. And so congratulations, as I said yesterday, a great job. So well done.
Councillor Juned.
I'm just very, very pleased to see the apprenticeships and also the ability for people to have learning opportunities in-house and at work. It would be interesting to see how that progresses, because I think being able to encourage younger people to be able to develop their careers here is something that I welcome, and I would just like to be able to see that, you know, that good results from it. So maybe a report back in a year or two's time.
Chair, the 3 corporate apprentice posts have been agreed with Unison, and they'll be in premises, democratic services and print and design. As far as I understand, there's no age limit on there is for an apprentice, but I take your comment.
Any further comments? We're asked to note the report. Are we content to do so? Yeah. Thank you. So we move on to the item 6, the recruitment to the post of Head of Housing, Revenues and Customer Services. You again?
It is me again, thank you.
I am a member of the West Midlands Employers Board, just in case that comes up.
Okay.
Thank you. It does form part of this report. Thank you for that. So you may or may not be aware that our existing Head of Service for Housing, Revenues and Customer Services has notified us of their retirement. It's their intent to leave on the 31st of January 2025. So the purpose of this report is to discuss and agree a way forward for how we will deal with the recruitment for the replacement. So the arrangements are set out here in the report, and there is a requirement to appoint a subcommittee to deal with that recruitment process, but we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. So as already stated, our Head of Housing, Revenues and Customer Services is vacating the post on the 31st of January, and we would like to seek agreement for how we progress with the recruitment and selection process moving forward. Previously, we've used West Midlands employers to provide us with that support, and we would like to do so again, particularly around advertising, hosting a campaign microsite, a candidate search, long listing, technical interviews, shortlisting, assessment centres, independent support to the employment subcommittee panel interviews, and provide candidate feedback at the end. The role profile and the job description is attached here in the appendices. With regard to long listing and shortlisting, the usual selection process is for senior management posts is a two-stage selection exercise, which takes place via a formal interview process. And in previous instances, initial consideration for the applications is being carried out by the Head of Paid Service and Human Resources. And then the suggested long list would then be presented to be considered at Employment Committee, and an agreed shortlist to invite the formal interview to the formal interview stages. I beg your pardon. The committee are asked to agree whether this approach is endorsed during the recruitment process.
Councillor Junod.
I'm happy to propose that we accept the recommendations and subject to any questions that are raised.
Yeah. Councillor Alcock.
Yes, I'm happy to accept the recommendations, and will also put my name forward for that subcommittee. And I just want to ensure that it will be offered internally, as that the job will be advertised internally as well as externally. I just want to make that very, very clear. That's great then, thank you.
Councillor Parry.
Just a couple of queries, not specifically connected with this. So my first question is the council, will the council be carrying out an exit interview? Yeah. Oh, there was another question. It's just gone for me. It's because I'm getting too old for this.
Hoggins, while you think, Councillor Parry.
So it's quite a tight deadline here, given the fact that we've got to shut down during December. For this calibre of person needed to take on this role, I'm sure there's going to be some lag between appointment and being able to take up post. So therefore, my question is, how do we intend to fill the gap, really? Thank you.
Chair, we will be looking at some interim arrangements, whether that's from external agency or internal staff. We haven't made that final decision yet, but we have some good ideas about how we will give continuity to that. Of course, like I say, of course, we're not expecting to advertise proper until the new year, with Annette leaving at the end of January. It is a retirement. I will say she's leaving because she wants to end her career from, but I take the point from Councillor Parry. We're not expecting to do the final interviews until early March in 2025, and therefore you're absolutely right. If we have a candidate that has to serve notice, that could then be a further 3 months. So we're probably looking at a period of 4 months where we'd need some interim cover in place.
Councillor Parry,
Oh,
have you found your question?
Questions,
So
follow-up
I'll come
question.
back. Yeah.
I'm actually really concerned about that lag. I'm sorry, it's because this is the Head of Housing, Revenues and Customer Service. You know, that is some pretty meaty stuff that this council really succeeds or fails on, really. This is the stuff, the housing associations, homelessness, you know, the telephone, you know, triage service. So when would we expect to have a report back as to how this is going to, you know, having good ideas is good, but what I need to know is, you know, potentially we've got 4 months then of a post being completely vacant until we can fill it, if that it could
Chair,
even be longer.
If I can comment, we're in open session here, and I don't want to say anything in open session other than it's my responsibility to cover those on interim arrangements. That falls to me as Head of Paid Service. For temporary arrangements, obviously the full-time appointment is absolutely a member appointment, but I can give you assurances that all of the points that you've just made were taken very seriously, and we hope to have absolutely suitable cover in place for that interim.
It was about the interim scenario, so I haven't written it down, but it was what I was going to ask, but you've covered that, so thank you.
Thanks, Chair. It's really a question about the process itself. Bearing in mind that we've if you like, we've got a lot of new councillors, and we're asking councillors to get involved in creating the shortlist. I'm interested in whether there'll be some training for those councillors on the attributes that they should be looking for. I think back to where we've just appointed an independent chair to the Audit and Standards Committee at County, and they brought in an independent consultant to go through the attributes. And the interesting thing was that everyone on that panel, including myself, learned something. We came up with an excellent choice in the end, a shortlist, and an excellent independent chair who starts next year, along with a separate member. But that training seemed to me to be well worth the investment to ensure that we got the right candidates coming through on the shortlist. So I wondered whether you'd consider something like that.
Yeah, and likewise, we provide training to anybody involved in that recruitment process. What the report is looking for is an employment subcommittee made up of 5 members. The constituency of that would be 3 to maintain political balance, 3 Liberal Democrats, and then 2 others. At the moment, 1 Conservative and then 1 Green or Independent. If we don't get a volunteer coming forward from the Green or Independent, then 2 Conservatives at that point.
And I'm sure we will all benefit from training in that. Any other points? Can I just ask on the process to establish the subcommittee? We don't do that today, do we?
No, well, I'll be consulting with group leaders to identify the makeup of that subcommittee.
Okay.
We just need for you to agree to the idea of the recruitment process, which would include the requirement to convene a subcommittee.
Right, we have 2 recommendations. That the arrangements set out in the report be either approved, amended, or decisions reached. Can I propose that we approve the arrangement? Is there a seconder? Councillor Alcock? All those in favour? That's everyone. And consequentially, I'm assuming we're all agreed the employment subcommittee be established for the purpose of the member panel interview. Thank you very much. So we move on to the workforce report. Mr. Buckland, do you want to point something out about one of the tables?
Chair, sorry. Thank you. So on page 23 of your papers, you've got a really interesting table which identifies lots of figures. Unfortunately, we don't tell you what the figures mean. Now, we've solved that in 2 separate ways. So on your tables, you should find a schedule. It's quite small, but it does at least give the headings. But we've also put together what the headings are for each of the rows on a separate piece of paper. So however you'd like to read the papers. Chairman, this is an update report which provides comfort information to the Employment Committee about the Council's establishment and where we are effectively with recruiting into posts on the establishment. We have 302 agreed permanent positions within the organisation, of which 284.7 at the time of producing this report were filled. From that perspective, we're always going to have some churn, we're always going to have some turnover, and they're figures that I'm quite comfortable with, but very happy to receive questions on that particular Appendix 2. On Appendix 1 as well, you will see that I have delegated authority to make establishment changes within the overall budget of the Council. The summary of what those changes are have been identified on Appendix 1. There is an exempt appendix that relates to this particular report. If there's any reference to that appendix, we will have to move into exempt session.
Can I ask if there are any questions simply on item 10? So we'll have to go into confidential session.
That's okay.
If the two, it seems to me that the two reports are linked. That is information feeding the workforce
Chair,
report.
would you like to hear what my question is? No? Okay.
I think probably if there's any reference to that appendix at all, Councillor, it's not a problem.
It's a
to me.
general question.
If there's a general question about what the report is showing,
No,
okay.
it's a general question.
But it's not all right.
Can we just have an
But
adjournment
it's
just
not
for 2 minutes
specific.
just to understand that?
It's in this area, but not
Yeah, I think-
specific.
We're just having an adjournment for 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Who's presenting this report?
Okay, so Chair, I think to be fair, we've got to the point where the report has been
done.
identified as
Okay.
an updating report about where we are on the structure of the organisation and the position in relation to vacancies and field posts, which, as I explained, Appendix 2 has some missing titles to the individual rows. And open to any questions there may be.
Councillor Coucher was the first hand I saw.
I just wanted to develop what Councillor Parry was talking about in relation to vacancies, because we all know vacancies are sometimes used to help with budget issues, and I think it would be very helpful if in future we could have more clarity about those vacancies that seem to be there permanently and those that, frankly, we are actively working to fulfil, because there is a substantial number of posts here which do appear to be vacant, and I think I think we need to know whether some of that is because we're managing the budget. The second point I wanted to raise really is I think these are a really interesting set of figures, really important. I must admit, when I looked at it last night, I couldn't see I was wondering what, I was making assumptions, but actually it was very helpful to have now the description. I think it would be very helpful if we're actually monitoring this certainly year by year, and possibly more than that, in terms of how numbers are changing in each of our service areas, so that we can get a full understanding in terms of where we are, where we are adding to establishment. We are aware, obviously, that the population in Stratford District continues to rise, and therefore the demand for certain services continues to rise. And I think we need to ensure that we are adequately resourcing certain areas accordingly, and therefore I think it would be useful to have that trend analysis. And I think that would also, that links very neatly, I think, to what we're getting back from the staff survey about people being overloaded. I think that's an issue where we need to look to see, are we resourcing correctly in terms of the demand that we have for service? Thank you.
I think yes, is response to that. So if the question is, can we have the trend analysis year on year on the level of staff, then absolutely that's something that we can provide.
And please, can we have a little more about the vacancy figures as well? Because I think at the moment that's a crude figure, which I think perhaps we need a bit more information about. I mean, whether that has to be in public session, I'm not sure, but I do think we need, as managers, or sorry, not as managers, as influencers, I think that would be it will be good information we need.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a question or a comment about consistency on numbers, and it may be my interpretation, but if I look at 1.8, the section 1.8 in this, it says the salary budget is 14 million. I see in the Cabinet papers it's 16 million. So it's just, and then coming down to the tables themselves, the numbers that I've seen, I think, approved as 319, not 302, and in another report, I'm just trying to find that figure now.
When you find it, could you refer to the page number for us?
Yeah, it's from yesterday's JCNG report, where I see that, I think I've got it here now, the head count was 319 and the full-time equivalent's 283. That's minor, the difference on the full-time equivalent, but the head count is different. And that's page 15 of 50 from yesterday. It's just getting that consistency on what we're seeing. Is it 319? Is it 302?
There is a reconciliation on that. The full-time equivalent that was reported yesterday was 284.71, which is the figure that's in the right-hand corner of the table that we have staff actually in post at the moment.
I'm looking at the infographic.
Sorry, and so am I. The FTE figure is not the same as the headcount figure, because obviously we employ a number of part-time staff, which takes account of different. But I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you outside about those particular points. That isn't meant in a threatening way. That's just an informative way.
Any other comments? Again, we're asked to note the content of the report. Then the next item is any urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business. And the next two items, items 11 and 12, are on blue paper. So I shall find the script. I've lost the script. So I'm moving that pursuant to section 100A, subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, the public be excluded from the remaining business of the meeting in view of the fact that the nature of the proceedings will be such that, if the public were present, there would likely to be disclosure to them of exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the said act as amended. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Junior, I think I saw first. All those in favour, please show. There's no one against.